Hello, friends. My name's Juliana, and I'm here to talk about the archetypal energies of the gene keys and the gates in human design and how that relates to our unique individual journey and then how that journey impacts the collective and how we are all involved in the evolutionary change that is happening in the world. So today we're going to talk about gate or gene key 13, which is transiting between February 2nd and February 7th, 2023. Now it's important to note that even if this archetype is not present in your human design chart or your hologenetic profile in the gene keys, this energy is still a part of you. It's just not your consistent story to play out in this lifetime. But you get flavors and tastes of it as we go through these transits. So I'm going to start with the human design piece of gate 13, and then we're going to move over to the gene keys. And I'm going to talk about the meaning, the shadow side, the higher expression, as well as how you can support yourself through these transits. So in human design, this gate 13 is known as the narrative in quantum human design language, the listener in traditional human design language, and it is in the G center, so in the center of your body, and it's connected to the throat via gate 33. And this is collective circuit. And in the I Ching, the hexagram is known as, through the translation, known as the fellowship of man. So if you have this gate active in your human design profile, you may have people tell you stories out of the blue. You might be that like quintessential bartender or hairdresser who stands there and people come and sit at your bar or sit in your chair, and then they just tell you your life story. My partner has this gate active in his unconscious Mercury, and he has written many memoirs for people where people share stories, their personal life stories that they have never found important until he opens that availability up to them and they tell him their stories. And if you have this gate, part of your gift... Hi, Lulu. There's my cat. She's going to go down for a minute. If you have this gate, you will also have the ability to know when to share alternative stories to help give people inspiration or a new way of looking at something. And so through this transit, this time is really asking us to look at how we can forgive the past and redefine our own story about who we are. Because this gate is all about the narrative and our stories, the stories we tell about ourselves. It's in the G center, which is the identity center, right? And our stories create a narrative in our minds and then create a emotional response, which then creates our experience in the world. So when we can tell a story that is empowering and inspiring, and it reflects our own value, this is an incredibly potent place to be, because then we step back into the creator part of our the truth of who we are. This time is also asking us to bear witness to the pain of others and offer them an alternative story of expansion. So if someone's sharing their pain with you, you listen, and then maybe there's a space for you to share another piece in there for them. So the shadow of gate 13 is when you see people stay stuck in old patterns, holding on to old pains, and remaining in victim consciousness, where they are a victim to their circumstances as opposed to choosing to step out of that consciousness and see maybe what the stories have and the experiences have offered them as a part on their human journey. So at the higher expression of this gate, this is that ability to be that story keeper, to really honor the stories of others as if they are precious gems, because our stories really make up this entire existence, right? The stories we tell, the emotions that are stimulated from those stories, that creates this world we live in. And so at that higher expression, when you can, and during this transit, when you can hold those stories with care, whether they are from pain or not, right? But then also add little nuggets, plant little seeds of the possibility that lies in those stories. And on a personal standpoint, that higher expression is the very it is an ability that is, most people need to really hone this over time, because we are born into a world of victim consciousness. We are told that we are a part of this dance that happens in what victim consciousness is. I'm going to do a video about that one of these days. If you would like me to make a video about victim consciousness, I would really appreciate it if you could just write that in the comments. But that ability to hone that ability to really step out of the relationship pattern of victim consciousness is such a beautiful high expression of Gate 13. So the gene key, Richard Rudd has named this, the overarching look at this gene key 13, listening through love. And it holds that theme of listening, right? Same with the gates. It's that keeper of those stories. And on the shadow aspect of this gene key, the shadow is called discord. And discord at an etymological level means the inability or the unwillingness to hear in musical terms, so where notes are off from each other, the notes on a guitar or a piano, they are in discord. So not being able to hear that, or not being able to hear or willing to hear differing opinions or beliefs. And we personally are often in discord with our past, where we judge what we experienced in the past, we judge our choices from the past, we doubt the choices we made in the past, and we carry shame or guilt about ourselves and our actions and what we chose to do, which then we most often project out onto others and judge them for similar stories. So if I didn't like, let's say I was bullied as a kid. I wasn't really, but let's say I was, and I never healed that. And then I would judge that part of myself as an adult that never stood up for herself, or I judged my parents for not protecting me. I could then, as I grow up, project that judgment and that anger out onto the world. So if I see someone bullying another, instead of it being an empowered place where I can make a different choice, I begin to judge bullies. Instead of seeing bullies from also just people who are hurting, I judge them as being bad or horrible people, right? To remember that, to go back to this idea of victim consciousness, is that everyone, even if you are a perpetrator or a bully or someone who is very angry, there is also just hurt under there. So this idea of discord has us projecting our own judgment, doubt, shame, or guilt out onto the world and back into ourselves. And this keeps us in reaction. This keeps us in a reactionary place where we are spending our life protecting ourselves from anyone finding out about this judgment, doubt, shame, or guilt. And we try to avoid anything that could bring that to the forefront. And what happens in this is that we result in cutting ourselves off from the whole and the collective. We begin to withdraw within, and we become incredibly independent, and we focus only on our own gains and our own pain. And we become so bogged down by our past stories that we lose hope for change. And this is both personally and collectively, right? If our past stories are holding us down with judgment, guilt, shame, it's very challenging to tap into the energy of hope, to be able to turn your head slightly and see a different perspective, to see another possibility, right? If we are living in fear, it's very challenging to sit down and listen to another person's perspective, right? And so then people, or yourself or myself, when others disagree with us or cut us off from our own truth and story, we end up folding to the power of others. We capitulate, we disconnect from the power of our own story, and we kind of go, oh, you must be right. So the gift of Gene Key 13 is the gift of discernment. And the journey from the shadow of discord to the gift of discernment involves becoming incredibly intimate what discernment means to you. So what is the definition of discernment? It is the ability to perceive and sift through what is of yours and what is of other, right? And when I say what is of, meaning your emotions, your thoughts, your beliefs, your perspectives. All the while knowing that your emotions and stories they're going to play a role in how well you can discern. So if you are incredibly if you are in a heightened emotional state because something has just happened, it's going to be more challenging to be able to perceive and sift through information that is coming towards you, to feel what feels right for you and what is of other. So this ability to discern, this gift of discernment, begins at a very personal level. You need to get familiar with your emotions and your feelings. Understand that your feelings about something will color how you view other people and other experiences. So when I was in counseling school, we did this exercise. I think it was our first class, and they called it the glasses exercise. And we were paired up with a person, and I still remember, she's one of my dear friends now. She was my partner. And the instructors guided us through this exercise where we had to close our eyes, and the other person was sitting across from us, just being themselves. They were just sitting there, bearing witness. And one person had to close their eyes, and the instructor would give, and I did this because I ended up teaching this. We would give suggestions as you feel really happy. You feel good about yourself, you are feeling very accomplished in the world, you feel safe. And then they would have us open our eyes and look at this person sitting across from us. And then they would have us close our eyes again. And then they would give us other cues, right? And it would be like, you feel unsafe, you're not sure if you can trust anyone, you're feeling financially stressed, you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from, that type of thing. And then we would open our eyes and look across at the other person. And it was amazing how my friend's facial features shifted when I was given cues to think about how I was feeling on a positive sense to how I was feeling on more of a negative sense. And so this is why we need to understand our emotions, because our emotions are going to color what's sitting in front of us. And this is at the center of what discernment is. So when you begin to feel, honor, and move your emotions, knowing that there's no emotion that's good or bad. I know I use negative and positive to describe emotions, but that's only on a frequency level. Negative emotions move more slowly, positive emotions move more quickly, and on the scale, I don't know what the scale is, but the positive emotions are here. Again, that's our human mind judging them, right? But emotions are just emotions. They become something that colors our world when we attach to them, when we judge them, and then they perpetuate. And so the more we can honor how we're feeling, connect with ourselves, and allow our emotions to shift and move as they are designed to do, we're not stuffing them away, we're allowing the emotion to happen. Whether it's tears, whether it's anger, whether someone says something to you at the dinner table and when you're visiting your family over some holiday and you go into the bathroom and you just look yourself in the mirror and you go, that really pissed me off, right? You're honoring your emotions there. You don't need to take it out on them, but you're honoring that experience and you're letting your body feel that. So when you do that, you reclaim the ability to listen to yourself and to others and the world and your intuition. So it's here where you become fully aware of your desires and emotions that are brought on by your stories and the senses. That instead of those stories and emotions grabbing hold and creating something out of our understanding and knowing, we remain a witness to the emotions and the stories instead of being victimized by them. And you then step out of the energy of reaction and you can hold your stories in love. So again, it's about really, if we look at a past experience that we've had, right? I don't have gate 13, but I understand it well as a therapist who holds people's stories and hears people's stories, and I have a lot of stories of my own, of course, as will you. And I've done a lot of forgiveness work around my past, is when we're no longer triggered by our stories from the past and we can hold equanimity, we can hold a balanced state to them, we can see that it was for something, that there was a gift in it, even in the pain. We create a new narrative for ourselves and thus the world. So tapping into discernment is the ability to use archetypal stories to your benefit. So you can live in your own fairy tale where you walk through your shadow. And your shadow is everything attached to the guilt and the shame that we feel about ourselves and others. We can walk around in that fairy tale all we want and see the wicked witch everywhere and see how horrible people are and all of that. Or we can integrate that shadow by feeling it, by turning towards it, by choosing something different for ourselves. And then that fairy tale shifts where we can also see light and hope, where we can also hold on to something more for ourselves. So at this time, during this current transit, watch out for your own stories of guilt, shame, or judgment about your past. This is an opportune time to find peace, understanding, and compassion for yourself. And it's also a really great time to practice befriending your emotions. Now, because stories are created, when we tell ourselves stories, this creates an emotional response in our physical body or our emotional body. And so when you're feeling an emotion about a story, right? When suddenly, if you find yourself thinking about something from your past, and suddenly you're feeling an emotion like guilt or shame or judgment, you know that that emotion is cueing you to know, okay, I haven't found compassion for myself in that story. And so what I would suggest that you do, a practice that you can try, is to write out what you're holding on to. Write it out. Allow yourself to feel the remorse, feel the guilt, express the anger, express the sadness. And then from that place, my partner just came home, I got distracted for a second. From that place, I want you to ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend, my child, whoever is really close to you, if they were experiencing this, if they couldn't let this go? What would I say to them? And then I want you to write that out. Okay? And that is a way to start beginning to find compassion and understanding and peace for yourself about your past. And then another thing you can do during this transit, which I always find really fun, is to watch the stories that are happening in the world. Watch the stories that are happening in the news, the stories your friends are telling. Watch the reactions and see if you can tap into that discernment where you actually pull away and you become the observer of this. Watch how you can choose not to play in the energy and just bear witness to it, right? Be the sacred witness of what's playing out, but don't join into it. So, on a final note, when we can reframe our stories, when we can tell a story of inspiration, when we can find hope in the heartache, this isn't a denial of shadow, but it's an acknowledgement for the transformation that it stimulates. Shadow and darkness are there for us to see our light. We live in a dualistic world. This is duality, right? There is going to be shadow and there's going to be light. But what we have the control over is how we perceive this and how much we want to play in that. So you can turn to your shadow and be terrified of it. You can feel guilt and shame about your past story and live in that. Or you can choose to turn to your shadow and think, okay, if this was my loved one, what would I say to them? Right? And find compassion for yourself there. You then acknowledge it and transform it. So I hope that was helpful for you today. If you found this video helpful, I would really appreciate if you could like or subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.